No Rest for the Weekend's coverage of the Tribeca Film Festival is sponsored by New York Women in Film and Television. NYWIFT congratulates its 15 members with films at Tribeca 2023. nywift.org. Black Magic Design, the world's highest quality products for the feature film, post and broadcast industries. blackmagicdesign.com. And by JMR Rentals, professional, digital, cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. jmrny.com.
I started making movies all because I saw Chasing Amy at 12 years old. I was a closeted queer trans kid in Kansas, and growing up in the suburbs, I thought life was pretty boring. And so movies were kind of my gateway to a more imagined life that was really fulfilling. Chasing Amy was the movie that made me feel seen, understood, and was a life raft when I really needed it in poor circumstances in my hometown. I started filmmaking because I just wanted to tell stories, and I thought movies were going to be the best vehicle for that. And so eventually I went to film school at the University of Kansas, and after my time at the University of Kansas, I started ideating on, okay, what was a movie that only I could make? And my very specific story with Chasing Amy and its life-saving impact on my life, that was the movie that just completely shifted everything, for me in terms of possibility models, in terms of a life that I could imagine more fully, and again, a life-saving impact when I was having a hard time dealing with a lot of the homophobia that I grew up with. Chasing Amy really started, with a lot of audacity. I had no connections to anybody who made Chasing Amy when I was, younger, or when I started the project. But, I was thinking about, what does a movie look like that really explores the LGBTQ community's relationship to Chasing Amy? What does that really look like? What does that mean? Out of nowhere, I got a Facebook ad for this thing called the TED Residency, which I ignored several times, but then ended up applying on the day of the deadline. The TED Residency is a program that was a 3-month idea incubator where I would do research on a project for 3 months and then give a TED Talk. After I applied, I didn't expect to ever hear back, but it turns out I was a finalist. They asked me to pitch my idea for a TED Talk during a great interview process that we had, and I just told them about my idea for a documentary about Chasing Amy. They responded in the best way, which is that it's the most narrow, specific idea for a TED Talk we've ever heard. We'll let you know in 2 weeks. 3 days later, I found out that I got it, and then a couple months later, I moved to New York, left Kansas really for the first time in my life, living somewhere else. I participated in the program, I gave the TED Talk, and the TED Talk was able to kind of get the attention of a lot of people, including, people who were willing to introduce me to Joey, but then also Kevin, because when the TED Talk came out, enough people had sent it to him within an hour of it being online that he just immediately responded. And kind of the rest was history. Chasing Amy is basically a rom-com written and directed by Kevin Smith, starring Ben Affleck and Joey Lauren Adams. The premise of the movie is that a straight man falls in love with a self-identified lesbian, and the movie really covers their ensuing romantic friendship, relationship, and ultimately how they fall apart. It is a super honest film that really resonated with me as a kid. I think Chasing Amy has a really nuanced reputation. Some of it is controversial, some of it is considered to be like a very honest movie about love and relationships. There's a lot to explore there, which is why I was interested in making the documentary in the first place. I thought that that was going to be a really compelling narrative to be able to explore, one community's relationship to a specific film, and then to be able to explore, what does good representation look like? What does bad representation look like? That's not the movie that we ended up making. We ended up making a much more personal film about my relationship to Chasing Amy, because I had the good sense to listen to the brilliant collaborators I had around me, including our producers, Alex, Carrie, Matthew, Leela, and we had amazing, just people talking me through the process and the whole way, so that I could make the most authentic version of this film. Because my specific relationship to Chasing Amy and how it saved my life as a kid, that was the hook for the TED Talk. And, it's kind of the place that we started at for the documentary. A lot of people don't consider it to be a queer film. I don't really know if you can call it a queer film. Some people do, some people don't. Some people, who are LGBTQ get a lot out of the movie, and some don't. There are also straight people and cisgender people who don't get a lot out of the movie. It's a very complicated movie, but at the end of the day, there was something about my story that, and my relationship to it, that I wanted to explore in the process of the documentary, and I'm happy with where it ended up. You can ask any single person who worked on Chasing Amy. I did not want to be the primary participant in it. And it was a super vulnerable place for me to go to. But then I also had to kind of weigh, with my director brain versus the person that I am. Like, okay, how much do I want to reveal? How much do I want to talk about myself? How, does this feel self-aggrandizing in any way? And so that was a constant balancing act for me as, the filmmaker, but also as the primary participant in it. Because, I didn't set out to be in the movie. I set out to tell a very specific story. But like I say in the movie, it's not the movie I set out to make, but it's the movie that we have. And so undoubtedly the toughest part for me was watching cuts of the movie. Because again, it's a vulnerable position to be in when you are the director, and you're also the participant who didn't sign up to necessarily be the participant. And so, I transition in the film. I come out as a trans guy. And for that, it was very hard for me to watch a version of myself that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen to preserve on film, right? Like, that was really challenging. And so it's a vulnerable space to be in. And, it was pretty emotionally draining, to watch myself come of age over and over and over again as we're editing the movie. My producer, Alex Schmitter, always says that, growing pains hurt. And this was a pretty continuous growing pain all throughout the post-production process. Now that we're on the other side of it and starting to talk about, the finished film, I'm now thinking about what does it look like, for a kid in my position to see a movie like this, and I sincerely hope that it has the positive impact that Chasing Amy had on me. That would be the most affirming thing for me as a storyteller. The idea that somebody got something out of it the way that I got something out of Chasing Amy, that would just mean the world to me. Getting into Tribeca was incredible. I could get emotional thinking about it. You work so long and so hard on a project, and you're working with a ton of people, right? Who've all put their guts into this, to help me, right? And to get that email saying, "Hey, you're in. We loved your movie," just meant everything to me, because it's 4.5 years at the time, like 4 years of just working on it and working on it and working on it and trying to make sure that it's the best version of the story that we could put out there. Endless revisions, endless cuts, a lot of late nights, a lot of long shoot days. And the idea that an institution like Tribeca, let alone the Tribeca Festival, wanted to premiere our movie was just the highest compliment in the world. And I'll never be able to thank the programmers and the staff here enough for the kindness they have imbued onto our team for that. So I couldn't be more thrilled.